So it's really a pleasure to be here. When my friend Joe Zaniker, who's sitting back here, had talked to me about Soul Talks, I remember thinking, what a really cool venue and an opportunity for sharing life's insights with others. So then when RJ contacted me about this month's topic, Renew the New, almost instantly I thought I knew exactly what story I could share. It was just like, it's very, very clear that what could happen. So it seems upon reflection that I've always had this burning desire to share my stories, my life experiences, and hopes of helping others. And I always felt that if I could take these life experiences and package them up in such a way, like a gift, then it could help others make sense, make some kind of meaning out of the events that happen in their lives. And I always thought that would just be a really wonderful thing to do. Yet every time I thought about designing one of these one-woman shows or writing a book or a national speaking tour, I never was able to find the right story and the right life experience or the right way to share any one of the many particular stories that I wanted to share. I was always thought I was driven by this need because I'm a storyteller. I'm Irish. We're natural storytellers. So I thought that's what always compelled me to want to share. And that I was someone that I could take an event and that there would be this beginning. I would embellish in the middle and then wrap it up nicely with a bow and have this ending. But the more I tried to wrap my head around the story that I could share with you all here today, Renew the New, the less sense than any of it made to me. And I began to ask myself, what does this really mean, renew the new? I thought about the life experiences that I've had and the stories that I could package up in 20 minutes and share with you all here. And then I began to realize I don't know, because maybe it's not about the story. Maybe it's not, I've been so driven because I'm a storyteller. Maybe I've been so driven because I need to have control over the life experiences that I have no control over. And that's what propels me to want to share. And that's what propels me to want to wrap it up with a nice beginning and embellish the middle and the end, and I have it in a bow, and it's a package, and it's my story. So I began to think about the past stories that I wanted to share. And my sister and I used to joke about that I could write a book about the book of titles. I could come up with great titles for every one of my life adventures. And she was saying, that would be a great book. Because unlike our guest speaker that was a writer, and you are not used to speaking, well, I'm used to speaking and I can't write. So I had great titles. So it was the book of titles. And I want to share with you some of these titles and how I got to be here. So one of my titles, chapter 1, it's called Major Tales. And it's called The Storyteller is Being Born because my grandmother's dog was named Major. And in a family of 5, and when we have family reunions of over 120 of us, to finally get some attention, telling a very humorous, funny story, nice and tight in a bow, got the attention of all the people at family reunions. So through my grandmother's dog, Major, and those stories, a storyteller was born. And I realized I kind of like doing this. This is fun, right? Then we move on to chapter 2. It's called The Sparkle Ball Theory. And that was based off of my years of singing to children in the hospitals, bedside and playroom. And I remember the first time I had the opportunity to work with the Children's Starbright Foundation out of Los Angeles, and they hired me to go to 3 hospitals in one day. And that was in the Bay Area. Now here in Sacramento, I would have one hospital on my calendar, and I remember 3 weeks before that performance, I would find myself feeling a sense of anxiety and like, how am I going to get through this? But then it was one performance, I could do it, and regardless of the condition of the children and the families, it was like, I can do this, I can do this. But 3 in one day, I didn't know how I was going to do this. And so thankfully calling my mom, who's a nurse, and who had said, Francie, it's your God-given talent, you got to go. You got to go sing to these kids because nobody else is doing that right now. at this particular time. And so in doing so, the only way I found out how I could get through some of the scenarios and the struggles and the heartbreak that families were going through was developing, and this thing, I end up calling it the sparkle ball theory, because I was able to feel this sense that within every single person was a sparkle ball, regardless of your religious backgrounds or beliefs, color, size, economic backgrounds. We all were born with it. Even the people who do heinous crimes, they were born with the sparkle ball inside of them, and it just happened to get clouded over years and life experiences. But inside it was still there, regardless of the house that sparkle ball lived in. So over time, I was able to find, no matter what I walked into, inside that little body that maybe didn't have a roof or the window panes were out, there was that sparkle ball, and that's who I sang to. That was my chapter 2. Chapter 3 was the oh shit factor. All of a sudden, my marriage of 16 and a half years fell apart, and it's like, oh shit, what do I do now? There's a big old wall there. And I thought, oh, that would be a good book, because talking about divorce and recovery and raising children, and whoa, my gosh, when you're the voice of Fairy Tale Town, I mean, everything looks really good, right? The oh shit factor, I could write about that. Then the chapter 4 was Beyond the Bottle. Now that's about going gray, because I kept thinking, I'm divorced, I'd always colored my hair. I'm going to see what life is beyond the bottle of coloring my hair. So that in itself would be a great book, right? Woman empowerment and strength, and here we are, and I'm going to write about it. I'm going to take pictures of it, and which I did for like about the first 6 weeks. And I'm watching this big white stripe going down my head, and I'm thinking, you know what? I think I'm going to move into another chapter. And about that time, I really wished that had been the chapter, because the next one is chapter 5. I'm never going to walk away. And that's when I discovered my beautiful daughter at 18 was suffering severely from depression and struggling that I didn't know, and attempted suicide at 18. And I remember trying to understand how life could change so dramatically. And all I could remember, the book titled, I'm Never Gonna Walk Away, was that sense of knowing that no matter what, I would be there for her. Whether I understood it or not, I would be there for her. And several years passed where we had to deal with in and out of hospitals and ambulance, emergency calls. And yet, you just aren't gonna ever walk away. That was chapter 5. And then comes chapter 6. You'd think 5, can we stop there, right? But chapter 6, screaming down the mountain. Live experience coming down from Santa Cruz. I just dropped my daughter off for her senior year of college. My daughter, Lindsay, my second born. And I'm coming down from Santa Cruz, and I am screaming and yelling because when I dropped her off, I knew that she was never going to come back to the home that she was born in, where we had Thanksgiving and Christmas for over 21 years of her life, because by that time, I had a neurological condition that derailed my performance career as a rising children's recording artist, where I would be touring nationally. The neurological condition affected my balance, my ability to move my muscles, and affected greatly my speech until the gift of Botox, and which has really been wonderful, repairing my speech. But when I dropped her off, I knew she wasn't coming back to Thanksgiving at that house, because through bankruptcy and foreclosure and my inability to work at the career that I had made a living from, we lost the house. And I'm screaming down the mountain, thinking about my other daughter, who by that time was starting to get some good traction on the right medications. But my other daughter now is feeling the impact of my professional career being completely gone from what we knew it to be. But then we move into chapter 7, which is yes. Surrendering to what is acceptance. Yes, chapter. That's chapter 7. I'm thinking yes. Because by that time, the community of Sacramento gathered round, put on a fundraising event for me. So instead of living in a 600 square foot little spot, I was able to rent a duplex. I was able to find my footing. I was able to get a sense of who am I now that I'm not this children's recording artist that I've identified. It's like, okay, so I'm an educator, And surrendering does not mean resignation. It means accepting that, yes, my life has changed. I am not going to do what I did before, but that doesn't mean I can't be what I can be, whatever is in the future. And so chapter 7 was like, yeah, all right, surrendering to what is acceptance. And that in itself is a book, right? Neurological condition, you lose your house, that's a good book. It's got hope at the end of it, right? Then we have chapter 8. It's called At Some Point, because this is when you realize you've had enough life experience. So at some point, you can write a book. I used to wait. Well, when is my story going to be significant enough? Well, by now it is feeling quite significant. I've got enough material here. Divorce, my daughter, neurological condition. What's a fairy tale town, for crying out loud, right? So that's got to be. So at some point, I can take what I know and I can write the book. But I'm not a writer. So I kept thinking, okay, one woman show, I can do it that way. But then we move into chapter 9, Christmas in March. Working so hard to write this book. And then February 26, 2016, I get a call. I found Kenzie. She's not breathing. My first daughter's name is Kenzie. The paramedics are here. That was her girlfriend, Amy, calling. That was the first time Kenzie was able to be open about being in a same-sex relationship and feeling that she was in love and happy. And I hear Amy's voice at 1:30 in the morning. They're in San Bernardino. They were going to go on a road trip, because a relationship that can survive a road trip, they can survive moving in together, and that's what they were planning on doing. And she found Kenzie not breathing. So between 1:30 a.m. and 2:30 a.m., I call her sister, and I just say, something's happened to Kenzie. She's down in San Bernardino. I don't have any more information than that. And we got in the car, because to fly down there wasn't quite fast enough. 5 a.m. to get down there wasn't fast enough, but if I left at 2 a.m. and between traffic, I'll get there. And you're driving down and you're calling the hospital and they can't tell you anything but to get down there. So Christmas in March, that's about gifts that we get that we don't expect. And I thought this would be a great story, because I could talk about how my daughter was so courageous trying to fight her mental health challenges and struggled with getting on the right medications. I could talk about the hummingbird that showed up after I got the news that she wasn't going to live. She's on life support, but she was not going to live. They told me first that her brain was severely damaged. And I said, so as, and she's going to walk with a stick like me, or speech? No, it's more than that. She's going to be in a nursing home? More than that. She's going to die? That's the news I got. So Christmas in March, I could talk about the hummingbird that showed up after I knew she was going to die. I could talk about how on March 1st, at 10:35 p.m., she was clinically brain dead. But the gift that was going to happen in March is that my daughter was a donor, an organ donor. And I could talk about the gift that on March 4th, my 60th birthday, she would be giving of herself to 5 families in hopes that their lives will live longer than what hers did. It was Christmas in March. That's what chapter 9 was going to be about. And then chapter 10, A Breath Worth Taking, because that's the book my daughter wanted to write. All the time she struggled, and we talked about, I said, Kenzie, I can use my position as a children's recording artist, well respected in the community. We can help continue to get the word out about mental health. And she finally said, Mom, I'm working on a book. And I go, there you go. It's not my story to tell, it's yours. And she titled it, A Breath Worth Taking. And I thought, that's it. That's the final chapter of a book, because it's her story, and it's a call to action. It's that story where you have this beginning, you embellish the middle, and then you have an end, and you say, this is the call to action. Support people that are struggling with mental health. Be there, support. That was chapter 10. And then I get a call from RJ, and I realize there's another chapter to this. It's called chapter, where did I go? There's the other chapter. And that would be chapter 11, which is Renew the New. And so when I thought about this last chapter, it hit me in March, this March, the 1-year anniversary, that I thought I could talk about what I thought I could talk about until I got here, and I realized I can't, because March was the most horrible experience in my life, and the 1-year anniversary was more difficult than I even believed humanly possible. And yet I thought about renew the new. So in preparing for this, I realized I can't bookend this. There's not a clear opening, and I can embellish the middle, but it doesn't have a straight follow through, and the ending is never going to be wrapped up with a bow. I'm never going to get that nice little, this is the way life is. Then I realized that there are life experiences that we don't have control of. And we can't always make sense of the things that happen in our lives, because that's what I want, is control, and I want to make sense. So maybe the next chapter, Renew the New, is about allowing the messy, the unpredictable, joviality, heartbreaking, day-to-day life experience to unfold, and allow them to unfold and surrender our need to have human control, to allow the pain, along with the joy, to seep into our souls and to live fully, and to realize, regardless of the life experiences, we can either sit on the sidelines and watch the Siskel parade go by, or we can jump in and wear a funny hat. So what does renew the renew mean now to me? No longer is there a story that's neat and tidy, but there now is a way of life to renew on a daily basis our faith that love will find a way, trust that life will find a way, and then to never lose hope in faith and trust. Thank you.